Welcome to the Wheels and Beyond podcast. This is a unique special episode because I am the one being interviewed here. For the video podcast, you'll see two mics. One of those is mine, and one is Will Bruce's. So we have Will Bruce here today as the interviewer, and he'll be interrogating me. We're here at the, what is it? I'm reading the thing over there. XFM News Production Studio. So it's going to sound all cool, even though it's still my mics that you'll hear. But anyways, so this is going on the air to, you said tomorrow?
Or not tomorrow. It's due tomorrow, but it will be on a Sunday at some point.
Okay. Can you let me know when?
Yes. Yes, I'll get the schedule and I can let you know.
Okay, awesome. And you know what? I think I'll steal his intro and put it right here.
This is Almost 107, a Fanshawe College journalism student podcast. Get real.
Have you ever thought about the future a growing city could hold? More transit, more infrastructure, new technologies, more efficiency, and less congestion. Well, that ideal future doesn't quite exist, at least for now. In fact, it sounds more like this. I'm Will Bruce, and in this episode of Almost 107, we're taking a look at Canada's fastest growing city, our very own London, Ontario. The Forest City is currently experiencing urban sprawl, where the city is expanding its boundaries while lacking density. This creates a unique and ever-expanding issue with transit options and accessibility. There is now more than ever an urgent need to future-proof our infrastructure amidst economic uncertainty ahead. I talked to Ben Durham, a self-described urbanist, content creator of all things biking and sustainable transit, and a local advocate who has taken the fight straight to City Hall. We break down how London plans to tackle the issues of today and of the future, while taking a deep dive into what the city is doing right and the inspiration and advice we can take from the rest of the world. Now, let's get right into it.
All right, so welcome to Almost 107, the Fanshawe College podcast. And I am here today with a guest talking about transit, urban design, and also just London, Ontario in general. So welcome to the podcast. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you. I am Ben, and you might say that I am an urbanist. I bike a lot. We're Car-Lite as a family, and we get around London primarily by bike. Well, actually, more specifically, e-bikes, because they're pretty awesome.
I could not imagine doing that. So the first thing I wanted to get into was, what is the daily experience of somebody trying to ride their bike across the city? Because, like I said, to me, it's not something I could picture myself doing, but I think there are definitely some benefits, but also some things that you have to watch out for.
For sure. So I would actually say that there's two different stages. There's the figuring it out, and that takes a lot of time. And then there's the other side where you have worked out all of the kinks, whether it's like rain or snow or ice or it's too hot or too cold, which there really aren't until you get to like -40 or +40. Like that's fairly extreme. And even in a car, you're like, you get into your car and you're like, whoa, blast the AC. But once you figure out everything, I came here on my bike today and it is -10. So I packed up, I have tripods here and camera stuff. I packed up my backpack, threw the stuff on the back of my bike, and came here, locked up, and I'm here. And that's kind of the daily, where you just look at the weather, and then you put on the correct clothing. And this will come up in a little bit, but I'll tease it real quick. A lot of the trips in London are not that long. Statistics from the city say that most trips are around the 3-kilometer range, which is very, very doable. And that's actually what happened today. It's probably like a 10-minute bike ride to get here for me. So that made it really nonsensical to drive and then pay for parking, etc. So,
and where would you draw that line, would you say, of I could maybe get there by bike, or I would actually want to take a vehicle?
So Byron. Byron is very difficult to get to by bike, to say the least, because I'm over in Huron Heights, so near Fanshawe College, And sometimes I go and donate blood, and that's over on the other side of the city. And it's like a 45-minute bike. I do it anyways, because why not? But that's pretty much the extent of it.
And how would you say London compares to other cities, whether it's in Ontario or in Canada? Like I know Montreal is, kind of known in Canada at least for having a good system, but also compared to Europe, because I kind of explained before, I came back from Europe, and it's a completely different experience, especially in terms of design and just the way the transit works. So where do you think London ranks among, all these different places?
So London is actually, on average, like the most average city in North America. So that's one of those fun stats. That is like, oh, where do you live? Oh, London. It is known to be the literal most average city. We have a lot of testing that's done here. We're the guinea pigs. Like when McDonald's introduces something, they introduce it here first as a test market. So the reason I bring that up is I think we actually are pretty good. You have Toronto, and it's we'll go with fun happening right now with the bike lanes and all of that. Then you have Montreal, which we chose to live there for just working remote for 5 weeks. It was wonderful. But I have to say, the core is great. And then as soon as you get out away from the core in Montreal, it actually is the same as everywhere else. It's actually pretty sprawly. We were on a nice bike path, and then suddenly we were like near a no-frills and a massive parking lot. And we're like, what the frickin' heck is this? So we're like, what? This isn't Montreal. And yes, it is once you get out of the core. And Vancouver's doing a really good job as well. But I think London has so much potential. That's why I'm always so stoked to talk about London. We have the TVP, which I would say 9 months of the year is very usable. And the other 3 months are the winter where the plowing is lacking. So we can't really rely on that as a commuting corridor, unfortunately. But we're getting there. And the connected grid is really important. And we are slowly, as a city, connecting with new infrastructure projects. They're introducing cycling infrastructure. So over at Fanshawe in Richmond, they redid the intersection. Unfortunately, definitely widened the heck out of the roads, needlessly. But they did add cycling infrastructure, and they updated that. But to get up there, you can't, because there's no connected grid. So if you're heading up from downtown to Masonville Mall, up Richmond, you can't. Like, you'd have to be on the sidewalk, which is illegal, and a lot of people do it anyways, and cops don't enforce it. But it's also a dangerous place to be in because of right turners, and people don't see them in the different speeds of travel. So there's no proper way of doing it. It's not connected yet, but we might get there. So.
And what would you say about London's current transit projects that are underway? For example, the bus lanes are a big topic of discussion. And then, as you mentioned, bike lane infrastructure, but I know Doug Ford has kind of maybe or is looking to override or at least lessen the amount that will be around. So do you think London's moving in the right direction?
Yes, and I don't think it will struggle as much as Toronto. We have a little bit more space. As I mentioned, like the road widening, it's like, okay, we had the room to road widen over near Fanshawe and Richmond, and then we added bike lanes as well. And that actually is not a problem when it comes to Doug Ford's Bill 212 hodgepodge of a bill, which is detrimental to a lot of people in Toronto because of the Bloor bike lane. But here in London, as much as it can still affect us, when new infrastructure goes in, it's in addition to, or it enhances the road, and it doesn't take away from vehicle traffic lanes. We could theoretically take parking, which has happened on a few roads, and Bill 212 could affect that. That would be less good, but it could happen. But it's less likely to happen, even though we are all three ridings here NDP, which I'm very happy with, in a sea of blue, but we'll keep politics out of this.
And kind of talking about that, like we kind of mentioned Doug Ford, I guess we said keep politics out of it, but I think that is a big part of it. So what do you think the public perception is of transit projects like this? Because I know there seems to be a lot of pushback a lot of the time, but I also feel like it's very important for people who want that. Basically, it's just another option of transit, right? Another way to get around other than cars. Where do you think the general public stands on that? And do you think it might be education that results in how people perceive things, or is it politics? Where do you kind of draw the line?
So there's two parts of the population, and one is you're going way too fast, London. What are you doing? You're like adding bike lanes left, right, and center. You're adding BRT left, right, and center, which is great, because the second part of people are people like me saying, hey, actually, you're going a little bit too slow. And I think there is a middle ground, because you want to balance the budget, sure. You want to balance safety, and you want to make sure that London is future-proof. If we wait to add all of this and we grow in population, if people think traffic is bad now, oh man, if we don't make these changes now, you're going to be stuck in traffic worse than Toronto. Because if our population expands more and we don't have other options, they are not, well, they are alternatives, but really they are options. You need to have other viable, reliable, and affordable options of getting around a city other than being in a vehicle. I know we were talking right before this, and you mentioned that you're on the way on the other side of the city and you drive. That's totally okay. That happens. But if we develop transit corridors and intensify around certain corridors, so let's say the large residential building going in over the next few years, it'll probably take a long time, near the Food Basics at the corner of Highbury and Oxford, that has 8,500 units going in. That's great. And then there's Montreal that has mid-density, and it actually has the most, over at the plateau, is the most dense housing and most dense population in Canada, and there's not a single high rise. So it's about mixing different zones and changing zoning, which is happening in London. That's why I'm so really excited about London's future, because they are making those changes. They're allowing that different development. But going back to, let's say, living on the other side of the city and having to commute over, let's say, to the other side, some people will still do that, but once you have the options available, people will actually change where they decide to live. I can't stress that enough, how important that is. If there's not the option, then people can't choose that option.
And I feel like a lot of people's reluctance maybe for funding for transit too is they always are like, oh, well, the ridership numbers aren't there to expand. But I think if things were to expand, then more people would ride. And it's kind of getting that balance of finding out how much to budget. And I know London as well, I believe for the rapid transit, basically gave an opt-out option to different parts of the city. And for example, my part of the city, London West, did not opt into that program, which I guess is somewhat similar to Montreal, you could say, where they have kind of the different parts of the city that, advocate for what they want. Do you think it's better to have like more of a unified vision for the city, or do you think it's if areas are more progressive and do want to add changes like this, do you think that's kind of a good way to go municipally?
We do have the London plan. We have the Master Mobility Plan as well, and it is headed in the right direction. Some people say that it's not enough. Some people say it's way too much. And so again, finding that middle ground. But I think what you were getting at there is like kind of the chicken or the egg situation, where it's like, well, no one rides it because XYZ, which sometimes are very like reasonable excuses. Like, I would have to walk 30 minutes to get to the bus stop, calling out West 5 over there. It's like a really nice, sustainable area in the middle of nowhere. Like it's has the bones of good if you live there, but everyone probably works elsewhere. And so you have to drive from there. And so suddenly all of that sustainability is not so sustainable when you just built a car-centric hub where everyone has to drive to and fro. So, yeah, they have the plan. We need to implement it. And it's going to be a little bit of hodgepodge here and there, but it really is about connecting. So whether that's BRT, so I know I loosely covered that, but the other bus routes are also important. So let's say West 5, you have to walk 30 minutes to get to the bus stop. Okay, that should be fixed. And then as we expand over in, let's say, the north and west of the city, I know people are like, oh, I don't want to take the bus. But do you want to sit in traffic? Because that's what you are saying. If you want to drive, you should want as many other people to get out of vehicles so that you won't have to sit in as much traffic. Because there is that balance of demand. If you are sitting in traffic and you see that bus go by in the BRT lane, you might just sit there and be like, huh, I've never considered taking the bus before. How much does it cost? And then you like go look it up when you get home. You're like, oh, okay, I could do that. Or maybe I could do that like 3 times per week or even 1. Or I'll take it on the weekend to see if I can do the route. So you just try it out. Same with biking. I always recommend this is don't try it on a day where you're going to stress if you're late or if something happens. Do it on a weekend. Do it on a day you're not working or commuting at all. Take the route, see what happens. So anyways, I got off topic there. Sorry, this happens.
One thing that I was kind of shocked to find out in the last few months was that London actually used to have a streetcar. And I did not know this at all. And I mean, I was born in Toronto, so I used to take the streetcar a lot. And whenever I go there, I do as well. But I could just never imagine London as a city with something like that. I know it only ran until about 1940. And at the time, the population was like nothing compared to what it is now. But do you ever think that could come back? This is more of just a fun question, I guess. But could you see that being something in the future?
I can. And we actually had almost that happen. And then if you look this up, there's something called downshift that happened because there was Shift London and we were going to go from BRT to LRT. And that was going to be amazing because it was streetcars. So LRT or light rail transit, similar streetcars, I guess, have a bad connotation for some reason, but they're pretty awesome. And if we had have done the LRT, the streetcars, the capital expenditure way back when, as we know, after COVID, everything spiked. Everything cost more. And the funny thing with LRT is that there is, of course, still maintenance. It's not a perfect system. Buses sometimes are a better option, but it's about having even the Transit Commission having options, saying, okay, we're going to lay track here and we're going to have the most trafficked routes be LRT instead of buses, and then the buses can be supplemental. So anyways, going back to your question, can it happen? Well, it already did happen, obviously, and then everything got torn up, and now we don't have a streetcar. I think it was down to Port Stanley, too. There was another one.
There's the connection. Yeah, I saw it connected to different intercity hubs as well.
Yep, and it was packed, apparently. Like, people, in a good way, people used it, because I would do that, yeah, if you're going to the beach. I don't always want to drive. Actually, very rarely do I want to. If it brought me from South London all the way over, even if I had to, let's say, drive or bike and then park and then take transit or go down to Port Stanley, that'd be awesome. And then in the core, let's say, yeah, Masonville, all the way down, like the different corridors, the west, north, east, and south. If you just did that with LRT, and then you had supplemental buses, it would be amazing. Unfortunately, that was botched. Going back to the downshift side of things, business owners did not like that, even though there's so many positives that it would have brought, but it would have caused a lot of chaos in the short term. Not as much as COVID, though. And then after COVID, like that just kind of, it's not going to happen, unfortunately. It might happen in the coming decade, but I think we might have missed that, unfortunately. There was a lot of federal funding and provincial funding in that, and we basically said, nah, we don't want your money, as in council and everything else. I should make an entire investigative journalistic piece on that, because that was a big oof for London.
Yeah, no, and one of the reasons why I asked that was, like I said, because I was in Europe. For example, in The Hague, where I was staying in the Netherlands, they had a tram service that went straight through, like it was just a residential neighborhood. And it just went straight through the middle of it. There was like one lane for traffic, and then they had the divided barrier in the middle for the trams to go through. I just found that unique because I know you said streetcars can kind of get a bad rep. Specifically because of Toronto, people are always like, well, the cars can turn in front of them. Well, in most other parts of the world, that's not the case. So I just, thinking of a system like that here would be, I think, a really good idea. Although I think another thing that I would bring up is just the design of London itself, because it's more of like a grid system. It's more of a North American stylized city. I know in Europe, a lot a lot of streets were more narrow. They were more dense with just different things. Where here, a lot of the road is taken up by the road itself. It's not necessarily the buildings and everything else around it. So how does that present a challenge compared to other places in the world that are moving forward with bigger transit projects just because of North American city design?
This might go into one of your other questions that you had, I think I have here. And it's about, I guess I should give some context first, but like London is only 20, like the urban growth boundary of London, Ontario, Canada is only like 20 kilometers by 16 kilometers, which is laughably small. It's very bikeable, first of all. So that's why we choose to do that. And then e-bikes makes it even better. But from a transit perspective and from a, like, why should we do this? And why is it difficult? It's because of the sprawl. And the urban growth boundary has now been extended. There's a whole other bit about that we won't get into here, but that's bad because everyone's complaining about taxes, property taxes, and hey, we need to fund, like, there's potholes and this and that. Guess what? When you have sprawl, you have less money to go around. There's utilities, whether it's like all of the sewage and electrical and the, not only that, but like the telecom, everything that goes under the roads to go to the sprawling developments increases property taxes, which also then increases cost of living for everyone, whether it's renters or homeowners or those who have to commute, because now you have to drive further and then you have more traffic. It just is an exponential problem. So when we densify, we save everyone money and save everyone time.
So I guess building off of that, I would ask in terms of, I guess just there's obviously a lot of things politically going on now. And in terms of funding and the willingness to do this, do you think because we haven't taken that step necessarily as soon as Europe, for example, do you think we've kind of fallen behind in that sense? Or especially just economically now, things are looking very uncertain. So how do you think people can be convinced to make that tax investment to build these kind of things?
For sure, I kind of hinted at it earlier, but that capital expenditure that happens with public transit, it's a lot. Like money has to come from somewhere. I totally understand that. And a lot of people drive, and I understand that. They drive out of necessity because the transit isn't there to fulfill their needs. But what if it could? And going into economic uncertainty, money is pretty much the thing that matters most to every single human being. It's like, okay, well, I have to drive because I have to get to my job. That's great. But what if you could reduce or you change your job? You could, okay, not everyone can do that. But what if you could reduce how many cars you have? Or what if you could do that entirely? Or if you could switch to biking 3 days of the week, and then in the winter, maybe you drive the one car or something. You can make it work with Car-Lite. I really am like an advocate for Car-Lite mentality, especially in car-centric cities. If you can go Car-Lite, then that's fantastic. But can we still do it? Yes. Economically, does it make sense? Yes, because municipalities, they have slightly different ways compared to provincial and federal funding. They have to maintain a little bit more of a budget, and they can't blow their budget entirely. I think that's the case. But it is still, when combined with provincial and federal funding, amazing to do up front, because then the cost later is less, pretty much. And if gas prices fluctuate, which we know they went up to like $2 per liter during COVID times when there was a squeeze. And I was like, well, that's unfortunate. I think during that time, for the few months that happened, I had to fill up our car once. And I was like, whoa, that costs a lot. And then everyone else, they were still driving around. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that must hurt. And so obviously the prices came back down because it's so rooted in our system that everyone has to drive, and it obviously brings up the cost of everything else. I recognize that trucks have to do deliveries, etc., but we could invest in rail. We already have rail. Anyways, there's so many there's such a domino effect with this. If gas prices did go up to $5 per liter, I can guarantee you everyone would be like, hey, how do I drive less? But right now there's just not that desire because gas is so inexpensive and driving is heavily subsidized, which again, whole other topic. A lot of this sprawl, a lot of the car-centric infrastructure is subsidized by those who don't drive and by everyone. So anyways, yeah.
No, I think that was a really good point. And what I would like to ask you for like the final question here is, what do you think the future will entail for London? Specifically, where do you think it will go, but where would you also like to see it go?
I would like to see a connected grid for cycling. And BRT, I think, is a great step in the transit direction because it allows for transit to actually do what it's good at, is moving a lot of people. When we talk about like wider roads and lane widenings, that's bad. Bad for drivers as well because it just induces demand. If you haven't heard about that, I'm sure you can look it up, but induced demand is a thing and you can see it happen. Over in front of North Costco, there's horrible traffic there. And it was going to be widened, and I really hope that they continue to not widen it because it would just get worse. It would turn into a highway, and you can see the dynamic information on one of the online dynamic map things that the City of London has. And it's, I think, anywhere between like 60 and 80,000 vehicles travel on Wonderland right there, right in front of North Costco, and traffic is horrendous. And that's one of the places that was designated as a transit village for that LRT project. And now it's like, hey, can we like fix traffic? Well, you already said no to the solution. So good luck, I guess. So, okay, what would I like to see? Connections. So like I mentioned at the top that London is doing a great job. And there's the two parties saying, oh, you're moving too fast and you're moving too slow. Yes and yes. Everyone's right in their own way, but we do need to make those connections. So I want to leave on this. If you get in your car and you want to go across the city, or you want to go over to the grocery store, you get in your car, you turn it on, you go. You don't really think of where you need to go. And also at the top, you said, hey, what's your daily, like, getting around on a bicycle? It is slightly different. You have to do more thinking. Again, you're driving in your car, you go to the grocery store, you park it because there's plentiful parking. That's great. You lock it, you go inside, get your groceries, come back out. With a bike, you want to first, when you're first starting, it's like, do they have a bike rack? Like,
that is true.
It's like, wait a second, some don't. And so I've been calling up and talking to plaza managers saying, hey, Argyle, I'm so disappointed in you. There is not a single, I have a picture. I should like show this to you. I counted. I spent like an hour of my life in Photoshop at it, like counting all of the satellite parking spots for Argyle Mall. There's over 1,300 in front of like the Walmart and the what is it? Not Michael's, Mark's or whatever. At all of those different stores, 1,300 parking spots. And I go there routinely, not driving. 90% of the time I go there on my bike. And I just straight up bring my bike in and I have into the stores and they're actually fine with it. They shouldn't be technically, but they have to be because there is literally zero parking along that entire strip mall. Zero. 1,300 parking spots for vehicles. And then people are like, well, why don't you, like, I have to drive. It's like, well, yeah, you kind of have to unless you want to go against the grain. And most people won't do that, which that's why you don't have an uptick. And that's the chicken or the egg thing. We need a connected grid. And then at the end points, you also need the infrastructure to park your bike. When there's literally zero, it's sending a message like for bike parking. Zero bike parking means, hey, you shouldn't bike here. Like, why would you? And so you have to be creative. And the sidewalk is super small. So then if you don't want to block the sidewalk for accessibility devices or wheelchairs, and yet here I am attaching to a signpost or bringing my bike into the stores and then locking up inside or literally just going through Walmart with my bicycle.
No, I actually am very surprised that they would let you do that because I know like I've worked in retail and they don't allow that where I am at all. But they also I don't think they have any bike parking either. Or they might have one small rack somewhere.
Yeah, maybe Walmart does have one. I think it's around a corner or something, if it is there, but I literally don't know. Or when I went, it was piled with snow, so I forget. But no, I understand from a retail side of things. You don't want people bringing your bikes in. I get that. But then I do that partially so that when the managers get called and say, hey, you can't be doing that, I'll be like, okay, no problem. I totally understand. However, where am I supposed to put this? And then they're kind of flummoxed. They're like, wait, I don't know. Like outside? I'm like, cool, where? And they're like, So I did that over in the Northland Mall as well, because the shoppers there, zero, I guess over near Toulouse, there's a bike parking, but they probably have 500 spots there, maybe two, somewhere like that for parking spots, and no bike parking. Actually, they took out a rack and never replaced it. So I brought it up with a store manager, and they're like, oh, we're going to talk to the plaza manager to maybe put one back in. So I'll get back to you in like 5 years and see if they see if they did that. Anyways, so connected grid and make it possible for people to do things. Final comment. Yeah.
And do you think that will be the direction that London ends up heading?
It's a good question. Yes and no. There's the 32.5% modal shift that's planned for, I believe, 2050. And that's laughably low when you consider that the population is going to double. And if you think that everyone, we're at about 500,000 people now. And if you think that if the population doubles, let's say to 800,000, I know that's not doubling. That's, I think, what the figure's supposed to be, like, predicted. Although it might be more, who knows? Maybe it does get to the million point. But let's say 800,000 people. Do you really think that we can fit 800,000 vehicles on the road? No is the answer. Like, that's not possible. That's not how that works. We need other options so that those, let's say, tradespeople, and I'm just trying to think of other people who need to drive, but people who have to drive out of the city to work. I don't know, Arva, Dorchester, St. Thomas. There's shuttle options that might have their funding cut coming up, which is unfortunate because those have been used. And having the options is really important, because if you don't have them, it actually disproportionately affects those of lower income as well. So we haven't even talked about the socio-economic side of things. I did talk about money, sure, but the fact that when you own a vehicle, it just costs a lot, whether it's insurance, and it will only get more costly, whether it's like the car insurance itself. If you don't drive your car, it's just sitting there on the road, in the driveway, in the parking garage. It's just eating away at your pocketbook. So we kind of have to go this way. I think that, yeah, well, we kind of need to. We need other options other than driving. And I'm not saying no one can drive. I will continue driving Car-Lite, very minimal when we need to.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, because as somebody myself, being a student, I work part-time. The most of my money goes to paying car insurance. And then, like I said, when I wasn't here, that insurance still had to be paid and the car was not being used. But you have insurance, you have gas, repairs, especially for somebody like me. Once again, I have a cheaper car because I'm a student, but that also means that it needs to be repaired more often. And you have all these different things. And you can even apply that to looking for property in London, for example. Like when I want to buy my first house or whatever, or even if I just want to get an apartment, a lot of these buildings are being built with necessary parking, whether it's underground or street parking, whatever, needed for every single unit. And I really don't think that that should be necessary. Obviously, there's going to be a million options. If you do have a car and you want to move somewhere for an apartment, or that is an apartment with a parking spot, I think that's perfect. But then there's the other side of like, well, if I was close enough to a transit hub and I was able to get a cheaper property for that reason and not have to pay insurance, not have to pay gas, I think that's a trade-off that I would be willing to make, and I'm sure many others too, but that option just really isn't there. So I think that's something that can be highlighted and talked about more, especially among younger people too. I think nobody really mentions it or thinks about it until it's brought up to them, and then they go, oh, that's actually like something I would consider.
Exactly. That right there, what you said, is exactly what I'm getting at. It's like, hey, it doesn't have to be everyone, but there are so many people that if it worked out that their work or their schooling or whatever they're doing in their life lines up along a transit corridor, and they could be like, oh, I could not have a car? Oh my, okay. So they sell that, they gain, let's say 10 grand on the sale of the car, then they put that towards literally anything, or a transit pass, which is like $100 a month. I actually forget because we use the tickets because we bike primarily. You save so much immediately. And then the second year passes and you're like, oh, I don't have to renew insurance. I don't have to do repairs. One of our biggest repairs is because we drive so infrequently, our brake rotors needed replacement and our tires wear out from the UV rays of it. So like the brake pads and the brake rotors, they disintegrate over time because we don't use the car enough. So we absolutely try our hardest to get the car out of the driveway at least twice per week. I know that's laughable, but we have to. Our mechanic was like, hey, you gotta drive more.
Yeah.
Anyways.
No, I think that, it's not, I think also just the way that people grow up, it's not something that's taught necessarily. And, or like I said, just thought about. It's not something considered by most people. So, I think that pretty much wraps it up. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Yeah, almost 107.
Well, thanks for listening. This was very fun. Thanks for having me on. And I quite enjoyed this. Again, sorry for the rambles.
Yeah, no problem.